everybody. Welcome back to the latest episode of the UK Glamping podcast, hosted by Glampitect. If you've been following along the previous few episodes, then you'll have met a couple of members of the team already. But today we are focusing on our in-house design team, which is obviously the bread and butter of what we do as a business, is help people get through planning permission and help with their site designs. So with that in mind, please welcome along Senior Designer Xanthe. Nice to have you along.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Another reluctant participant in the podcast. So Xanthe, as I say, is one of our senior designers here at Glampitect. So we'll come on to kind of what it is, all the different products and stuff that we offer in just a moment. But can you just tell us a little bit about how long you've been with the company and what your role is?
Yeah, so I've been with the company since August 2022. So like a year and a half-ish. My day-to-day is basically working on planning applications for our clients, doing all the drawings and supporting documentation for that. And then there's like bits and pieces that obviously will go into detail, but that's kind of the main bulk of the work that I do, pretty much.
Perfect. So when you say drawings, I think that's kind of technical drawings and CAD software and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So technical drawings, like layout plans for pods or cabins or shepherd's huts, whatever unit our clients want to put on their site, and then 3D visuals, supporting reports and things like that as well, like design access statement, everything that kind of goes into a planning application, really.
Yeah. So basically, absolutely everything we help our clients with. Short responsibility once we get off the phone to them. Perfect. Yeah, happy days. Okay, so yeah, it's probably a good time to touch on the sort of range of products that we offer, because your team probably arguably cover the widest gambit of any team within Glampitect, in that planning can take many different kind of shapes and sizes, and the way we help our clients can take many different shapes and sizes as well, from just kind of initial concept drawings, if that's all they need, through to pre-planning applications, if that's applicable, full planning applications, and indeed just kind of hourly consultative work, if they just need little bits of help here and there. So I'd like to touch for a moment on the kind of the major differences between some of the products we offer. So if you could just summarise for us what's involved in kind of a concept design.
Yeah, for sure. So a concept design is the basis for any of the packages, to be honest. That's the main layout for the site. So sometimes we'll do that just independently. So it's just to give our clients an idea of the kind of the scale of the site, how many they could comfortably fit, how many units they could comfortably fit, and just get an idea of maybe landscaping, things like that. If they kind of have an idea in their head, it's just us putting it on a drawing basically and just showing them this is what you could achieve with your site, really.
So just like a kind of an initial overview basically, rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah, the units are the main thing, and the space in between them and stuff, because sometimes it's hard for them to imagine how they think they've got a lot more space than they have, or they think of a lot less space than they have, and they're quite surprised about the space in between the units and stuff. So it's just to give an idea of that. And then things like access and parking, any additional structures they want to put on the site as well, and just kind of get an overall idea of what the site will look like, really.
Perfect. Yeah, that's something we touched on with Callum actually, is how little space you can need for a productive site. But indeed, like, you need to be aware of the fact that these units aren't small. You can't have them right packed.
Yeah, there's so many variable factors as well. Like because some people like to have the idea of each of their guests feeling quite, like secluded, like their own little retreat, so they want them quite spaced out, whereas others are just like, we want to try and like get as much financial gain from this as possible, so they'll have them closer together and everything in between. So yeah, it really depends what.
Yeah, I think you do for sure. You see two very different kind of schools of layout there, from kind of more community feel, where they're quite happy to have kind of shared experiences, is probably the most polite way to put it, and the more kind of isolated, luxurious feel. So, so beyond concept design, the first stage in a kind of planning application proper that we deal with is pre-planning. Now, that's not necessary in many cases, but sometimes pre-planning is a necessary step just to get a little bit more clarity from the council around specific areas or any particular areas of concern that might have been highlighted. So how does pre-planning differ significantly from full planning? What don't you include, if you like, at a pre-planning stage that you would ordinarily at a full planning?
I think the main significant difference for our clients is that you don't get a decision from a pre-planning application. There's no kind of say, the planner won't say like, this is going to be approved. They can say, we could support this if X, Y, and Z, but they won't give you a definite answer. So it's not like saying, it's more advice, basically, like you said. It's if there's challenges that have been brought up, usually by our feasibility studies. You've had a feasibility study with us, and there is some challenges that have come up, such as like flooding or land designations, such as like areas of outstanding natural beauty or anything like that. Then it is advisable to get a pre-planning application, just in case there are going to be any hurdles that are like really difficult to overcome. Pre-planning is a good way to do it, and it doesn't mean that that's just going to put an end to your journey. It just means you know what you're going to have to do if you want to move forward, whether that's like extra assessments or surveys or just extra considerations in the design, really.
Yeah, so we normally use that if there's an area of concern already highlighted, as opposed to just planning straight on. Yeah, it makes sense. Unfortunately, not all councils are massively constructive with their pre-planning feedback, which is, again, a good reason that a feasibility study is generally where we start with our clients, because we're in the envious position where we've worked with just about every council area in the UK now, and we'll generally have some sort of experience as to whether or not pre-planning is going to be a constructive process or not. Callum, our CEO, doesn't hide the fact that he's a bit of a pre-planning hater, but I think that's a victim of experience rather than necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just different ways people approach things. He's very much like, I'm just going to resolve that issue when I come to it, whereas some people are like, I want to know everything that might come up ahead of time. So it depends on the person as well.
Yeah,
I think I'd be more of a pre-planner than Callum.
Yeah, 100% me too.
Yeah.
On that subject, that's probably a good time to talk about, you mentioned obviously pre-planning is used to address hurdles and potential issues. What would you say are the most kind of common hurdles that you see come up time and time again for clients? You touched on things like areas of outstanding natural beauty there. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's more like so that can be very subjective. No. Which one?
Yes. Subjective, I think.
Subjective. Yeah, so it's like how much of an impact your site's going to have on the wider landscape. So we'll always propose landscaping and things like that, but sometimes the council can just say, no, that's going to have too much of an impact, and you'll have to get like visual impact assessment and things like that. But it's good to know at a pre-planning stage, one, whether that's going to be asked for, and two, whether it's something you can even overcome. So areas of outstanding natural beauty are easier. Things like flooding can be really, really difficult to overcome. Heritage assets. So we had a client recently who was refused, unfortunately, because he had part of a World Heritage site which was going right through his site, and we did everything we could to overcome any impact to that asset, but just because we were affecting the kind of landscape around it, they wouldn't accept it, and it was.
They're always a bit of a double-edged sword, aren't they? Because obviously they're very appealing plots by their nature, because if they're in a World Heritage site, the likelihood is they're going to be pretty stunning. But unfortunately, the reason for that is it's so restrictive.
Yeah, and it was the only, in the refusal, like the decision notice, it was the only thing that was listed for refusal. So every other box had been ticked, like ecology. Ecology was the main one. There was also a public right-of-way footpath nearby. That was overcome. That was fine. There was loads of different things that we did overcome at financial cost to the client to get these surveys and everything. And then still, we tried to speak to the council and to their heritage consultant to say, like, look, is there anything we can do? And sometimes it's just the case that there's nothing you can do to overcome one of these. So that's why it's good to get as much information as you can as early as possible, just to know how much of an issue it's going to be, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we take a lot of pride in obviously being able to overcome hurdles with our clients, but we're not Supermen at the end of the day. We're not going to be able to win them all, unfortunately, much as we'd like to.
Yeah, we do everything we can, but sometimes as well, it's dependent on council. Some will work with us, and some will just be, no, what I say goes.
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly. That's planning officers for you. Yeah. That's a question I get a lot kind of on the front line when I first chat to customers is, most customers like myself, if I would have to be in their planning application, wouldn't have a clue where to start, what to do, how to keep a planning officer happy. So one of the first questions is, well, look, if we do planning with you, how does it work? Like, is it just that we send you X, Y, and Z and you format it, or is actually a kind of consultative process, which I think is one of the best parts of my experience and certainly my clients' experience with Glampitect is the amount of advice and expertise they can lean on when they get as far as you and your team. Clearly, you're in a position where you've seen hundreds of applications come and go over the year and a half that you've been with the company. So, how do you find that side of the job with kind of advising clients and helping answer questions that they might not know the answers to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best projects that we have are ones where it's like it's a joint effort. So we're working with the client rather than just fully just saying you should do this. It's like this is what we recommend based on our knowledge and expertise and what we found from the feasibility and other research and things like that that would work best. But we want to at the end of the day achieve, what they want on their site. In the end of the day, what they want to build. So I find the best clients to work with are ones who have a clear vision of what they want, and they communicate that because at the end of the day, we're here to achieve what they want.
It's hard to create it for them, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have had a couple of clients that just go, just tell me what to do.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, if they don't know.
Whilst we could do that, it's always nice if we can help a customer realise their own vision.
And things like we do help a lot with most of the clients that I've worked with, and it's the way I would do it as well, is don't want units like overlooking each other, so we'll like orientate them in a special way so that everyone kind of has their own aspect, or you want to like make the most of a view and things like that. Or if a client does come to us and they have a layout that we're like, not quite sure this would like utilize your plot.
How do I diplomatically tell them that this is a horrible idea?
Sometimes I'll do the layout that they've suggested and being like, have you thought about also maybe trying this instead, and try to kind of steer them. If I think that they are kind of missing like a good opportunity, then of course we'll try and we want what's best for them as well. So,
of course.
Yeah,
I think certainly from the point where I kind of hand clients off to the design team, a lot of clients seem to have got as far as the bits that I would look for if I was looking to go away for a glamping stay, and that they look at what's the view out of the pod, what's it going to look like on Instagram, that sort of stuff. But they haven't necessarily thought about the less sexy side of the project, like drainage. Where am I going to put my drainage ditch? Where's the septic tank going to go? All that sort of stuff. And that's where I find that almost every client needs a little bit of help with a steer.
Yeah,
so that's fair.
It can be tricky if, especially on small sites, trying to fit in the drainage and things like that. And also with ones, if someone has a huge piece of land and they're like, oh, I want one over here and one like a mile away, then it's like, well, that's fine, but like, how much is it going to cost you to get the infrastructure, to get, paths up there or tracks if you want people to be able to drive all the way to their unit. And I think people are just, they're thinking of the vision and like Instagram and not thinking about, right, how much is this going to cost me? And is it even possible to get services to these?
Well, that's it. The services and the customer experience is the other side of that, isn't it? Because especially when customers have woodland, I find they want the pods further apart than they would in necessarily an open setting, which I get because it's lovely and it'll look fantastic on the marketing. But you then have to think about the walk from the car park to the pods, and the amount of groundworks and the costs can escalate fairly quickly. So
and woodland's a whole different.
It's exactly those sorts. I can see a little bit flicker through your eyes there.
I actually enjoy woodland sites, but they are a real challenge. So you've got the walk and the distance, but the other thing is in a woodland site, there's trees. And planners don't want to get rid of trees. Well, the council ecologist is going to say to them, if a client's going to get rid of half the forest to put these pods in, then no.
Yeah, exactly. So biodiversity net gain is something that we touched on a little bit with Luke on the feasibility episode, and it's obviously a fairly hot button topic at the moment across the whole of the UK, but especially England at the moment. So it's probably a good time to touch in on the project that Avant Glamp have just had approved at the NEC in Birmingham, because I know you spent countless hours struggling with tree surveys and topos and ecologist appraisals on that front. That's probably as good an example as we've got of being able to overcome hurdles. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of back and forth with that project?
So there's 500 plus trees on the NEC site, and every single one of those had to be mapped. So their physical location had to get mapped, and they had to be surveyed. So their species size, crown spread, the health of the tree, and That was done in parts. So for me, as a designer, I had to revise the drawings multiple times when we got more information in about where the trees were and the health of the trees. So obviously we want to, like I said before, we want to remove as little trees as possible. So trying to fit.
So you had to individually plot 500 trees.
Did I? No,
Yeah.
no. I get
I was going to say,
it.
that's a hell of a
Definitely not.
technical drawing.
No, so basically what has to happen with it, and I would recommend this to any client who has a woodland site, get a tree survey, which usually has to be preceded by a topographical survey. So a topographical survey is what pinpoints the actual locations, and then the tree survey is an arboriculturist who actually surveys the species and everything and gives you a big like numbers them all, gives you a big table with all the information. So yeah, woodland sites, biodiversity net gain. So in that, for NEC, for example, I had to revise. We went in and I think we were initially going to be having to remove, I can't even remember how many trees, over 100 trees to put all the pods in, and the council was not,
pretty immediate no to that, wasn't it?
Yeah, not completely on board with that, so I had to go back and revise it, and I think we got it down to, I can't even remember now, 60 or something. I'm just pulling these figures out of my head.
No, it's good. It's a good indication of the kind of give and
exactly.
take that clients might have to experience.
And then also having to say, so for that you have to put in a tree protection plan as well, which is another whole study that the arboriculturalist will do, and also mitigation planning. So for every tree that we remove, you have to plant, depending on the value of the tree, because they'll have different values, you have to plant 1, 2, 3, whatever, on site, or you can purchase credits for somewhere else in the council and they'll plant them somewhere else. But
oh right, okay, I didn't realise that was an option now. So
yeah.
So you don't necessarily have to make up for it on your specific site. You can actually
for biodiversity, for trees and for biodiversity net gain. Well, it's more for biodiversity net gain. If you cannot achieve the gain on your site, you can purchase credits with the council and they'll do it elsewhere.
They'll plant them somewhere else.
Yeah, it changes from council to council how much it'll cost, but usually it's going to be cheaper for you to do it on your own site if you can.
Yeah, if it's council led, they're gonna take the piss of it, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Honest. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, it sounds like you had your hands full with that project for sure.
Got there in the end.
So let's talk briefly kind of expected timeframes. Now again, I know anything led by a council, it's a bit of a lick your finger and stick it in the air job, because ultimately they'll take as long as they like and there's not an awful lot you can do about it. But from a client perspective, if they were looking at kind of a concept design or a pre-planning package, from the point that you get started, what's the rough sort of turnaround time to have that ready to submit to a council?
So we aim for pre-planning applications, we aim to get it submitted to the council within 3 weeks if we can. That obviously depends on our communication with the client as well, and back and forth and things like that. We work on multiple projects at the same time, so it depends on our workload as well. So 3 weeks for a pre-planning application, and then it would be 4 to 6 weeks for a full planning application, again depending on our individual workload and back and forth with the client. If the client's has a bit of indecision about where they want things and need to kind of think things through, or if there's any additional surveys, then obviously that'll push things forward. Or if they've got all their ducks in a row before they even come to design, then we can get it done within 3-4 weeks. But it varies, like how long's a piece of time.
Yeah. It's a difficult one to predict, isn't it? I think obviously so many clients that do this have either working full time at the moment or have other commitments that it must be quite frustrating trying to make time outside your full time jobs. I know how we feel when we've kind of finished the day. The last thing you want to do is start digging through paperwork and analysing detailed plans.
A very long to-do list of things that I've been putting off.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well that's really good to get an idea of the sort of timescales involved, and then over to the council and
once it goes to the council,
pray that they're efficient.
Once it goes to the council, the timeframes as well can vary from council to council, but they go
anybody's guess.
I mean, they go through a validation process first, which takes usually 2 to 3 weeks. And that's just to say that we've submitted all the information that they need before they can even give it to a planner to assess. So sometimes it can come back as invalid, and that doesn't mean, that's not like an indication of how it's going to go when it does get assessed. It just means they want more information. So it could be a survey, it could be revise some drawings because there's information missing, or anything in between. And then once it gets assigned to a planner, it can take, they'll give us like a letter, like an official letter to say the date that we should expect the decision by. And it's usually between 60 and 90 days. But again, doesn't always mean that's what you're going to get.
Usually, yeah. So sometimes it's 15 days, sometimes it's 15 months.
Yeah. I mean, it's very rare they'll give it to you beforehand, but...
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll put links to all the information packs on our various different design services in the description of this episode. So if you do want to find out any more, feel free just to click on those and download a guide. Alternatively, you'll have seen my face and my phone number pop up regularly throughout this episode. So feel free to give me a call or drop me an email. So just before we wrap up, Xanthe, thanks very much for taking the time out of your day to come and record this for everybody. What one piece of advice would you give clients if you could, who are seeking planning advice? Is there any one particular thing that you think would prepare them best for the process?
Yeah, I mean, my personal advice would be don't try and cut corners. I think with councils, with NEC, for example, we had to get 3 different surveys done for the trees. But it's like, if we just did fully the first time, then we wouldn't have had to do it 3 times. But it's things like that. Surveys, if you're asked for surveys by the planner, or if it's recommended in the feasibility or from pre-planning, if you do that kind of process with us, it's best just to kind of, I always think it's best to get everything you need, because it's going to streamline the process when you do actually come to the application being assessed. And councils and planners prefer transparency. If you try and think you can hide something from them, you can't.
Yeah, they've seen it all before.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just better to just
rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Exactly, yeah. And it just it saves a lot of headaches in the future, because any time that I've seen someone just be like, oh, we'll just wait and see if we need it, usually you do need it.
You will need it.
And you're just kind
There's
of
a reason we've told you about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah, that would be...
Okay, well listen, thank you very much again for taking your time. Everybody, details in the description, as we say, if you want any further information, and we will see you again soon on the next episode. Thanks, Xanthe.
All the best. Cheers.